Join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you haven't signed the register in the back of the room, I would appreciate it if you'd do so. Roll call of the board.
Ms. Dawn? Here. Mr. Hernandez?
Present.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Here.
Ms. Quintero?
Present.
Mr. Crouch?
Present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is governing board comments. Mr. Jaramillo.
Just real quick, I want to give kudos to Mr. Hernandez yesterday. As he spoke on, I don't know if it was national TV or not, he was representing our Sunnyside Unified School District and wearing his nice gray polo shirt. So thank you, Mr. Hernandez. And well said, well spoken as well, what you talked about. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
And on that note, our principal, Andy Townsend, was on television this morning
Good.
talking about the same safety in the schools and stuff. If you have nothing else to do March 16th and 17th, and you want to go see a quick show at Desert View High School, it's a one-act show from starting at 6 o'clock at Desert View, written by Michael Wallace. It's going to be Famous Last Words. And I'm done.
Ms. Dong.
You know, the arts are so vibrant here in this district. It's always so neat to see all the different things that are happening. Last night I was over at the at Sunnyside in the gymnasium because they have so much things going that they had to put the orchestra in the gym and the band in the other gym, because there's just so much going on all the time in our district. But it was really neat to see. I mean, they were both packed. Both of the gyms were packed with our parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts. Everybody, you know, that was related to these children were there. So the support is fantastic. They're going to have another one right now, and I'm sure it's going to be just as jam-packed. So it's really nice to see such a huge support from the community always for our students, and so many of them involved in the arts, because we all know that when they get involved with things like that, you know, they're going to do much, much better in school. It just helps them as far as their brain development and their social, the social activities is just phenomenal. So it was a fantastic evening. I really enjoyed it. The students, you could tell, were really excited about performing in front of so many people and nervous at the same time. But it was beautiful, and I just want to give kudos to all of the music teachers too that allow all this to happen in our district. There's such great music teachers throughout elementary, middle, and high school that we are very fortunate also to have that opportunity here. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez.
Not at this time, Mr. Crouch. Thank you.
I'd like to echo what Ms. Dong said. I had the opportunity to go over and watch the bands and the orchestra. You had to go back and forth between them. The massed bands from the elementary schools and the massed orchestras. They really did a great job of playing well together. They acted like they had been playing for years together. Well, at least for a few weeks. They're elementary school kids. They're doing a great job. Also, I'd like to congratulate the district for having the innovation van at the Tucson Festival of Books. Other school districts had little booths where they're talking to people. We had the innovation van. I saw Victor at the van. It was loaded. The table was loaded up with kids that were playing and understanding a little bit about the innovation that goes on at Sunnyside. So it was really good. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow is Pi Day. Pi Day. 3/14.
What are you baking?
Mr. Holmes, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch.
members of the governing board, members of the audience. I think we have a picture here of the innovation van as well. Here's our orchestra. I'll just start while we're transitioning. I did get to see the rehearsal today for the 5th grade mass bands. They sound amazing. I mean, just to hear the power of the musicianship, and what they're learning in terms of the discipline of just not only the music, but the individual practice that it takes to be a good performer, and how that translates into the classroom as well. And so it was a really nice, affirming commitment that we have for the fine arts that I thought was showcases both quality of our students, but the quality of our teachers and the people that are out there teaching. I got to see Carl McCurry directing, so they know what to come. And Mr. McCurry is no joke. He doesn't play around, but he puts together some great bands. Great work. So here we have the innovation bus or van, or we can call it a food truck if we want to look at it. Food for the minds, right? The Sunnyside Innovation Bus made its way to the Tucson Festival of Books at the University of Arizona last weekend. Girls from the from Desert View's STEM Club facilitated a wide range of learning activities for kids, while Lawfer students showed off Future Cities projects. Thank you to Frank McCormick, Nurse Finkenthal, Justin Powell, Jackie Nichols, Shane Lorenko, and all the students who showed up to showcase Sunnyside's spirit of innovation. I'd echo Mr. Crouch. It was nice that we had actually some of the work. I saw some of the booths from other districts and people talking about the district, but we were able to show kind of some of the work that's happening. Thanks to Mr. Mercado putting that up. He's the only guy that I know that can wear a bow tie and jump and drive a food van at the same time. And actually, the battery died, so he was like, how am I getting this thing back? So you're on your own. I can go jump you if you want, but he did make it back. It's sitting back there. Good work. Multi-talented is right. We also have our Apollo Middle School and Desert View Orchestra ensembles win big at Aboda Concert Festival. So our Apollo Middle School's 8th grade chamber orchestra and Desert View Symphonic Orchestra hit all the right notes at the 2018 ABODA Aboda Concerts. Apollo earned a superior rating at the Arizona Band and Orchestra Directors Association Middle School Festival, while Desert View's High School Symphonic Orchestra earned an excellent rating at the Arizona Band and Orchestra's Directors Association Area Concert Festival. Desert View High School tied with Canyon de Oro High School for the highest rating of any high school orchestra in the Tucson area. This qualifies Desert View for the State Concert Festival in April. So again, top quality, and we're getting some really good awards. I remember our drama program, our orchestra program. I mean, there's just top quality extra co-curricular activities that our kids can participate in. It just showcases the multitude of talent in our school district. We also have Sunnyside bioscience students awarded conservation internships and recognized at Coronado National Forest Family Day. Here we have 12 students from Stephen Uyeda's bioscience program at Sunnyside High School were named Earth Conservation Interns and were recognized by Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild and Pima County Supervisor Richard Elias at a public event at Kennedy Park on Saturday, March 10th. As part of their paid internships, the students will work 5 days on priority restoration projects at the Coronado National Forest. The conservation internship introduces students to public lands, conservation issues, national resource careers, and living more sustainably. Students who participate in this program will have the opportunity to take coursework at Pima Community College as part of a $5.4 million Youth Career Connect program supported by the U.S. Department of Labor through June 2018. We also have, finally, Desert View DECA winners return home with top awards and scholarships. Desert View students won big at the DECA State Conference. Our students joined more than 2,000 students from across Arizona to learn from keynote speakers and participate in workshops and case study competitions. Students competed in a variety of role plays in industries such as apparel and accessories, restaurant marketing, hotel and lodging management, automotive, marketing communications, and human resource management. Though many Desert View students were recognized, top honors went to Samara Fabetla, who earned 4th place in apparel and accessories marketing and received a $1,000 scholarship from California's Fashion Institute of Design and Marketing, while U.S. Presidential Scholar nominee Anthony Wozniak took 1st place in the Business Growth Plan category. So again, congratulations to these wonderful students at Desert View. That concludes our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. We have no recognitions tonight and no call to the audience. Next on the agenda is consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Kraut?
Aye. Motion passes. Under general functions, we have 2019 self-insurance update. Laura Emsley?
Good evening, President Crouch, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Holmes. Thank you for this opportunity once again to bring you the recommendations for the 2018-2019 Employee Benefits Plan Year. These recommendations are coming to you from the SUSD 12 Employee Benefits Trust Board, and the recommendations are going to be presented from our benefits consultant, CBIZ. Thank you. Do they just They're going to be presented from our benefits consultant, CBIZ, and our account executive, Christine Cott. So I'm going to invite her to join me up here right now so that she can go ahead and get started. And then please feel free to interrupt with questions as we go through, because it's a lot of information that we'll be going over tonight, okay? Chris?
President Couch, members of the Governing Board, thank you for having me today. Again, I'm Christine Cott with CBIZ, your benefits consultant. And as Laura said, I'm here to present the SUSD Trust Board recommendations for the 2018-2019 plan year. Plan year. Okay, just as a recap from last year, we have an overall long-term strategy on the medical plan to manage and mitigate the cost, and we want to do that through self-funding, which we made that change to last year. Last year, if we had renewed with Blue Cross on a fully insured plan, it would have cost employees an 11% increase for this 2017-18 plan year. By moving to self-funded, we were able to mitigate those costs and not increase any plan costs and actually lower them a little bit last year. Also, as a reminder, because you went self-funded, you did have to put the funds to be put in a trust to be managed and protected, and the district has that responsibility of ensuring that that trust is funded to ensure that all claims are paid. And SUSD did appoint a board of trustees, a very great board of trustees. You have Laura on that board, Ellen Bolzomi, who's the Pima County Director of Human Resources. Nancy Johnson is a CEO for El Rio Community Health Center. Ned Norris, I believe used to be on the governing board and is an SUSD alumni. And Elaine Joan is also a SUSD alumni. So you have a very strong board of trustees that we've been working very hard with over the last several months. Some of their responsibilities, again, are to manage and protect those funds now and in the future to ensure that claims are being paid and ensure that there's reserves for the future years. They evaluate the plans and the coverage to ensure that there is adequate funding for any and all claims. They recommend plan design, programs, deductible amounts, and premiums for employees as part of their responsibilities. And then they're also informed on the SUSD finances and what funding is available for the benefits from the district. So what have the trustees been doing? We've had 5 public meetings over the last several months. They've become very familiar with all the benefits that SUSD offers, plan design, contribution structure. They're understanding the contribution that the district's able to put in and any funding that may be available. They're reviewing the claims, so premium versus claims that's available, how the plans are performing. We've reviewed the actuarial funding projections. And again, they're really understanding the goal that there's not a lot of extra money to put towards the benefits right now, so they want to, again, manage those costs for employees the best they can for what the district can put in and what the employees are putting in there. We have reviewed well-being initiatives, and we have some items that we'll discuss there. They've reviewed renewal options, and they've made renewal recommendations for this year. So their plan design recommendations for this 18-19 plan year are to increase the out-of-pocket maximums on the PPO 500 from $2,500 to $3,500. Increase the PPO 1500 out-of-pocket maximum from $4,000 to $4,500. Now, I'll have you keep in mind that you have an initial deductible of either $1,500 or $1,000 or $1,500, and then you have what's called co-insurance to that maximum. So in a plan year, that would be your worst-case scenario, is what we're talking about when we talk about out-of-pocket maximums. But you'll see below that we have two sets of reporting. One is the 16-17 plan year. It shows you that 82% of the members paid less than $1,000. Okay, so they wouldn't even hit that out-of-pocket maximum. 14% paid between $1,000 and $3,000, and then only 4% paid over $3,000. So really it impacts very few employees and just those that have the additional cost. And we also showed plan year 15 and 16, so you can see again that trend kind of continues, whereas most employees, over 80%, are spending less than $1,000 in a plan year. And again, in that 15-16 year, 12% between $1,000 and $3,000, and 2% paid over $3,000. In addition, some other changes that are recommended are specialty pharmacy. We know that specialty drug cost continues to increase substantially. Prescription drug trend is anywhere from 11 to 13%. There's a lot of very expensive medications out there. Right now we have a specialty copay of $50. When you were with Blue Cross, it was actually a range between $50 and $200. So this year we made a change just to have it at that lowest copay amount. The recommendation is to make it a $100 copay. Yes, sir.
Quick question on that. That's $50 per
Prescription.
per prescription, so it could be $50 a month per year would be $600, and for that,
Correct, and it
then
does.
$1,200.
Correct, and it does apply towards that out-of-pocket maximum. So any co-pays, any deductible, that out-of-pocket maximum captures all of the out-of-network cost, or all of the cost. So it includes that.
Thank you.
Any other questions so far?
Well, before we
Go ahead.
leave the drugs. I would also like to ask that we put on our website, there's an app that you put in their prescription, and it tells you where in Tucson is the cheapest. And you go from like $180, $160, $150, $50.
Right, so
I think-
GoodRx is an app that does that?
That's the one.
Okay. We talk about that in our open enrollment meetings. We talk about ways that
good.
they can save money. We know that Walgreens typically costs the most. So we talk about this and educate the employees to help them find the lower cost. A copay, typically wherever you go, is going to be that copay as long as it's a contracted pharmacy. But when people are on that health savings account, everything is going towards that deductible. And so that's definitely a place that we want them to take a look, and we direct them along with the Magellan is your pharmacy benefit manager, and they have a lot of those tools as well.
Great.
Great point.
Is it 18 people?
Oh, thank you,
Okay.
yes. So currently, we've identified 18 people that would be impacted, and we would actually send letters to them and let them know, and we'll keep that updated.
What does that letter state?
It's going to just say that they've been identified as having a specialty drug. So again, these are drugs that cost anywhere from $500 to $78,000 or plus. It just depends on the drug. But it's going to say you've been identified as having this drug, and your copay is going to be changing the new plan here, just to let them know, so it's not a big surprise. Additional plan design recommendations are to update the plan. There's some legacy benefits in there, and taking a look at just industry standards and what's required. There's some changes that are recommended, such as imaging, specialty imaging, so CT scans, MRIs, PET scans. Currently on the PPO $500 and $1,500 plans, it's a $100 copay. The recommendation is to change to a $250 copay on the PPO 500 and a deductible and co-insurance on the $1,500 plan. Also for allergy testing and serum, non-emergent medical transport, TMJ, which is your,
Trigeminal.
thank you.
Yeah, that one.
And DME, which is durable medical equipment. Those are all covered right now at 100%. There's no cost to the employee on those plans, and those are typically towards the deductible coinsurance. So just some cost share there, so that's recommended. And you'll see also bariatric, we're recommending to exclude bariatric surgery. However, if anyone is in that process within the last 6 months, we would grandfather them in, because anyone that is in that process, we wouldn't want to take that away. And you'll see in the chart, I'm not sure if you have it in front of you to see the numbers, but it just shows you the impact of, how many claimants there has been over the last 2 years and the amount paid. So it's not huge amounts, but again, it makes an impact in the cost of claims as the years go on. Any questions yet?
Ms. Cotero?
Do you think people don't go to the doctor because they can't afford that still, even though?
What's going to be helpful and what we're taking a look at, now that you are self-funded, what really is beneficial is we can take a look at the claims. And if you give me a minute, we're going to also talk about a wellness strategy where we do want to encourage people to go to the doctor because it's free. Preventive care is free. So we want to encourage that and motivate employees to get the services that, find out things earlier if they can, or just continue their wellness. But we hope people are going, but I think as we're going to see more and more claims being self-funded, we'll have a better idea of who is going and who isn't going. So it's a good question. Anything else?
Thank you.
Sure. The contribution recommendations. This is broken out by pay period so that you can see the pay period impact cost. It's recommended to increase the PPO 500 plan 8.3%. For an employee only, that would be just $7.63 per pay period. The PPO 1500 is a recommended 3.1% increase, which is a $2.36 per pay period cost to an employee only. And then no change to the HSA high deductible plan 3000, and also to continue the $500 health savings account contribution.
Do you have a breakdown of how many employees are in each plan right now?
I do. You have 40% of your employees in the PPO 500, which, if you want that actual number,
No, the percentages are
that
fine.
works, okay. You have 22% in the PPO 1500, and you have 38% in the 3000. And year over year, we've continued to see migration into the HSA, that high deductible 3000. Even last year, with no increase to premiums, we saw an 8% migration to that plan. And typically, when we're not seeing an increase, we don't see a lot of movement. And you still had movement because we have continued to do the education. Employees are talking to each other, and they're understanding that there's some savings to be had by moving to that plan. It's right here, but if you take a look, if someone was to move from that PPO 500 to the HSA plan, they're going to save almost $1,200. $1,200 over the course of the year in premium, which is something they could decide to set aside to pay for those expenses towards that $3,000 deductible. If they're on that 1500 plan, they could save $866 for the course of the year. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. We were talking a little bit about that pharmacy tool, and then just about employee. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting I have to move this down. There's a tool that UMR. They're your third-party administrator, so they process your claims. They offer a decision support tool. It's actually one of the most robust tools I've seen out there. What it allows us to do is put in all of your plan information for all of the 3 options, along with premium information that employees would be paying. And it's going to compare the premium that an employee is paying, whether they're enrolled by themselves or with family, children, whatever it may be, And they can actually go in there and pick the prescriptions they have. They can pick the health issues they could have. They can just do a real basic one and say, they're healthy, or they could do a, I have this issue, this issue, and put all of that data in there. You'll see it has annual premium, annual health service cost, and it's going to calculate about what they would be paying for that. And if they want to put any money in, or the district does put the $500 for the HSA health savings account, it takes that into account, and then it basically calculates down the bottom in an annual year what that employee is expected to pay by premium and cost of service. So we're going to offer the recommendation. Yep. The recommendation is to offer that this year. We had a tool like that a few years ago. This is a lot more robust and hopefully user-friendly, and we plan on having, possibly people here in the office there to show employees how to use it and have some tutorials online as well.
We don't get in trouble.
So then the renewal funding for the 2018 plan year. The total estimated annual cost without the plan changes we were talking about is that top number, the 7.5 million. Making those plan changes is 7.4 million. So it's about $174,000 savings with those plan changes. We know that the district can't absorb any additional increase, so that 4.7 million is the estimated SUSD contribution based on how that plan is how the plans are expected to run, so no increase to the district. And so the employee contributions that we show have an estimated $2.7 million contribution. The maximum exposure, because you are self-funded, is 8.6 million, so the difference between that is 1.2. We expect at the end of the 2018-19 plan year, we'll have about just over $1 million in those reserves that we want to continue to protect and have in the future. And then I talked a little bit about the well-being. We talked about, again, encouraging employees to go get the services that they need for their health. We want people to go get that preventive care. It's covered at 100%, no copay, no deductible. To encourage that, we know we also have to incent it. So we've come up with a recommendation that employees can earn 50 points over the course of this next plan year. So basically from May through maybe March of 2019. Earn 50 points by doing a health risk assessment. So they're going online and just saying, this is my blood pressure, just answering some simple questions through the UMR site, so it's all protected. Also, they would earn 30 points through a biometric screening with their physician. Basically, you're going for your preventive care and getting your blood work. That's what we're asking of them. They would earn 30 points, so that would be 50 points there. If someone didn't want to do those, we have other options, so they can participate in a SUSD sponsored event. They can attend an EAP webinar. You have a really great EAP program that offers a lot of tools online. And then we'll offer some on-site wellness seminars. So there's different ways for people to earn their 50 points. If they do that, then in the 1920 year, they could earn a $25 premium differential. So we, again, want to reward those healthy behaviors.
It's $25 per pay period?
Pay period. Questions on those? That concludes the medical portion of it. And I can move on to the dental. TDA is your prepaid plan. They issued a 4% increase this year. They are changing names to Summit Care, and the difference you'll see on the right side is the monthly difference. It's not broken out by pay period. There hasn't been an increase to that plan in 2 years. The MetLife dental did have a 7% increase. We did have a 30-year rate guarantee, a rate cap on that plan. Fortunately, that plan is running, the loss ratio is very high right now over the last couple of years, and actually called for a 43% increase. So we had that rate cap, so there was a 7% increase on that. We're going to try to do some education this year and, again, try to get that plan running a little bit better in the future years. You'll see the difference there, again, is a monthly difference on the right side. questions? Yes, sir?
Mr. Holmes?
Just for clarification, the dental part is not part of our self-insured
It is
options,
not.
right?
Yes, this is just, these
They're
are
a la carte.
voluntary, thank you, yeah, these are the voluntary options for employees. The MetLife cost, though, is still less than it was a couple years ago when you were with Delta. And then vision, again, no change to vision, it's another rate guarantee for another 4 years. And do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Mr. Hernandez, do you have any questions?
Can I go on the plan? Can I go on the plan? Kidding.
Did you want to say something
No, I
else?
just said, can I go on the plan?
I wish. Ms. Dunn?
Yeah, I understand all of it, and it seems better than when we were before, having such huge increases every single year, Our rates were going up and going up. So I still feel that we did the right decision in going self-insured, that we've been able to keep the costs down. The only thing that really saddens me is the cost of the CAT scans and MRIs, simply because I've known so many people that have put off some very important CAT scans and MRIs because of cost. And for some people, $250 might not seem like a lot, but for others, $250 is, they can't do it right away. They have to wait, and then that time sometimes doesn't come.
Right.
So that's the only thing, but I understand the need to, raise some of these costs. It's just that particular one, because of knowledge of some people, that, some experiences that I've seen, and when they tell me, I'm supposed to take this test, but I'm not going to be able to do it, it's really disheartening.
May I respond to that? The only thing I would say, and what we try to encourage, is, again, moving towards that high deductible plan. Again, it's higher out-of-pocket cost, which we know, but they would also have that
The
health savings
the
account
HS
to help offset it.
I had that when I was working over at Juvie. I loved it. Anytime I had to get some medication, there it was. If I
Right.
had to have a CAT scan, there it was. And at first, it seemed like, it was a little scary. But before I knew it, it had added up enough to where I could pay with my little card. And it was like I wasn't paying because it was from that card. I mean, I know I was paying, but
Right, and you
it
were-
was that card, and it was a lot easier for me to, I have to have a CAT scan or whatever. My knee has to, have that MRI. Here it is, and I didn't have to worry about it.
Right, so the more we try to keep encouraging that behavior and moving towards that plan and saving that money in premium, because that's a huge savings in premium, that if they could put that money aside, because we want people to get those CAT scans. It's definitely, we're not doing it to deter that, but it's just that cost of that plan is very expensive. So again, we are encouraging the HSA plan, but through education, and it's been popular when people have enrolled in it.
Mr. Holmes?
Can you just, for the audience, can you play that out just a little bit more in terms of how that would work if we're getting an MRI in the high deductible versus doing it in the PPO 500? Like, so what would, walk that, if you can just walk a scenario through, like an anecdote
Yeah,
of what.
so basically you have a couple of options. Let's just say an MRI is $300. On that PPO 500 plan, you would again pay that $250 copay, and it would go towards your out-of-pocket maximum. But if you had another one, you would have another $250. On the high deductible health plan, it would cost $300, so you would be responsible. We'll say that's again the contracted amount because you have United Healthcare. You're responsible for that $300, but you have that savings account, and again, the district's putting aside money into that account up to, that's $500 for the calendar, for the plan year. And if you put your own money in there, that would also add into it. So you have a debit card that now, okay, I have this $300 CAT scan, but I can pay with my debit card. And it's also going towards that high deductible of $3,000. And if you were to hit that $3,000, you would then be covered at 100% in a plan year.
Yeah, I'd like to add something very quickly. In speaking of the cost of medical services, costs vary significantly from center to center, from pharmacy to pharmacy, as was mentioned earlier. And so motivating employees to go to the high deductible health plan also motivates more of a consumer-driven healthcare plan where people will shop around and look online. There's tools online that we would like to educate our employees on to be able to look for where is that most affordable MRI, where is that most affordable CAT scan, so that when they are on the high deductible health plan, they're not paying $1,500 for an MRI that they can pay $300 for at a center next door. So it's a lot of education. Yeah.
Are there any tax consequences for the HSA?
There's tax benefits. Hope it's not a consequence. So you can
It's a
put in
positive
pre-tax-
consequence.
Yeah, pre-tax dollars. It lowers your taxable income, so we talk about that. The money grows tax-free, earns money, not that there's a lot of interest right now, but it earns money tax-free. And then when you pay for those qualified expenses, your medical, your dental, your vision, comes out tax-free. We also talk about how the money in there you can use for your dependents, even if they're not on the plan. We encourage them to have enough in there, but again, that money can be used for your tax dependents as well.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions?
Is there a motion?
Motion. Mr.
Ms. Stone?
I move that we approve the self-insurance update as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Great
very much.
presentation. Next item on the agenda is Health Services Reorganization. Dr. Favela?
Apologize, just making sure we don't get interrupted again.
Good evening, President Crouch, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Holmes. What I have for you today is a proposal that I'm going to request Governing Board action on this item, and I'll discuss it in pretty much detail. And also, I wanted to recognize before I start, in case during or at the end of the presentation, if you have questions, I also have some of my colleagues from Health Services who are joining us tonight. My goodness, quite a few people here. So we have several of our health clerks you can recognize. We have Nina and Vanessa and Lisa. Wait, here. And Beth. Oh, good, I thought, did I not? I said I'm having a moment, I need my PPO. And then we have Nurse Sarah Rodden and Nurse Jan Sissons with us. So if you have any questions specifically that you'd like them to chime in, please do so. So why am I bringing this at this time? And actually, this has been quite a long time coming. We have had many discussions over the years about our increasing difficulty in finding health services, specifically RNs. We had a time in our quite distant past now where we had a nurse in every school, but it's becoming more and more difficult. And I'll show you in a minute what other districts are doing. And what we have 3 vacancies right now. And every time we have a vacancy, it seems like it takes longer and longer for that vacancy to be covered. And we have to scramble. to find ways to cover. We also do not have a cadre of subs that we used to have. We were able to call on a sub and say, hey, can you be there for whatever number of weeks that we needed that. We just don't have the subs, and if we try to go to an agency, the cost is so prohibitive that it's just not something the district could sustain to pay subs what the agencies charge. We also have inconsistencies across the schools. Like I said, we kind of tried this new model where we have some of the nurses already who are at multiple schools. And we have clerks, you see some of them behind me, who are already serving in some of those schools. So I would say almost half and half. We have a nurse per school as opposed to a nurse at multiple schools. We've had that quasi-model for a while. And then the pay that we have in comparison to other districts is difficult for all the more reason to try to keep our clerks, who are quite wonderful. We have very competent clerks in our schools, as we do nurses, and we want to be able to retain them, to attract them, but also retain them. And we also, in our discussions, feel like a possible reorganization, while difficult, could actually lead to greater collaboration in a team approach to really working with providing the most important thing, which is services to our students. And I think that's where we're really struggling for that. And so you've been aware of the changes over the years. And at times, since I've been in student services, there were times that we had 6 and 7 vacancies at a time, and it becomes more and more difficult. So what we did was we checked what other districts are doing. And certainly, Amphi seems to be very optimal, and we wouldn't mind having that model if we had all of the funds to be able to do that. But they have almost a nurse in every school. They have a full-time director of health services and a full-time case manager for the district, as well as health aides. So they basically have almost a nurse in every school and a health aide in every school. So that's pretty optimal. If you look at the rest of the schools, the school districts, most of the districts are already having traveling nurses. If you look at Flowing Wells, for example, there are 11 schools, but only 1.5 FTE for RN. And so they have a health aide at every school, and they have a part-time case manager. So basically a nurse and a half FTE for 11 schools. At TUSD, of course, they have 87 schools, and the only place where they have full-time nurse is, they have 3 at Tucson High. But the rest of the schools have traveling nurses, and they have health aides in the schools. So more and more you're finding that schools are having to go to that model simply for survival and to make sure that we have coverage. And of course, our clerks are trained. It's not like we just throw them in there and they don't have any idea what to do. And that's why we want to make sure that with this model that we provide a consistency across as to what all health clerks are supposed to do and what they're not allowed to do. They always have to be under the supervision of a nurse at some point. But the nurse is not necessarily there. So you'll see Marana, Sahuarita, Marana does have a coordinator of health services, but they do have nurses that cover up to 4 schools each. But Sahuarita, when in my office they checked with Sahuarita and they said, "You're telling me there's 1 nurse for 9 schools?" And she sighed and went, "Yes, just 1." And so they do have health aides at every school. So you'll see that that's what's happening out there in the districts. Aside from Amphi, it seems that everybody's going to the similar model. So this is what is the proposed model, is that we are requesting to move forward, to move from what we have now is 16.2 FTE and move those to 10 RN FTE. That means that, and we have 3 vacancies. So it would mean a difference of about 3 positions in addition to the ones that are vacant. And in the reorganization, nurses would take 2 or 3 schools apiece, and within that, we would designate, within that model, we would designate 2 coordinator positions, not as full-time coordinators where they didn't have schools. These people would have schools that they would oversee, and then they would each oversee about 4 to 5 people each. And that would lead to also a collaborative team effect where schools could work together to learn from each other and also to monitor, to help with the kinds of things that the schools are doing with the health information system that we have called Care Docs. There's a great deal of information that needs to go in there and requires support and training. Also then, the nurse, the RNs, we're proposing that those RN positions be upgraded to nurse specialists. So you see that you have 2 FTE for coordinator, you have 8 FTE for nurse specialists. That would make the 10 that we're proposing. And that we would just designate the coordinator positions to oversee. And so did somebody have, and if you have a question, please feel free to
Ms. Stone?
ask.
I'm sorry, did you say the nurse specialists are nurses, but they've been upgraded?
That we would propose in this model
okay.
to upgrade the current RN position.
RNs.
All of them are RNs. The coordinator would be RNs, and the specialists, we're just upgrading them because we're asking them to take up to 3 schools.
Okay.
And so it would pay a bit more, and so the nurse RN would become a nurse specialist. The coordinator would be an RN, but be coordinator and also be upgraded a bit, because we're asking them not only to take 2 to 3 schools, but also to supervise 4 or more of their colleagues, okay? And then what we're proposing then is to take the health clerks, the current health clerk position, and upgrade it, because we're also starting to see our clerks leaving us because we are the non-competitive hourly rate that we pay. So we would recommend that we upgrade them and reclassify their position to a health office administrative assistant, which would be a higher grade in pay. And we would increase the number of assistants from 15 to 22 or 23 in case we have the opportunity, because some of our schools are larger and require some support there. So we're reducing the number of FTEs in order to pay a little more and retain the people we've got, pay a little more to nurses and have fewer of them. That's the only way we could afford to do it all. And then increase the number of clerks to health assistants, but pay them more.
Dr. Favell, this implies that we have one health office administrative assistant at each school?
Yes, sir. Yes, we do.
So
We would have at least one.
They'll be dedicated?
Yes, sir. And for every, for those schools that are very large or very, very busy, that we might have more than one clerk, and then that clerk could also help. If this clerk is absent, we would have an extra clerk that we might be able to say, hey, can you cover this school or that school? And I'll show you in just a second the draft of how we're putting those together. So this is a draft. The actual configuration of the schools can still, we can still work on that. We have another staff meeting. We've had multiple staff meetings with the Health Services Department, and I have to admit that not everybody likes this, because it is a change. It is something that we've been used to over the years, to have a nurse at every school. We haven't always had clerks in every school, but we've pretty much in the past had RNs at every school. But, times, yes, they are a-changing. So, we've had to make do so that we can serve our kids. So this is just a draft of the possible configurations. The number in parentheses would show the total number of clerks for that group. So if you have Craycroft, Los Niños, Laufer, each of those schools would get a clerk, and they would have an RN specialist that would cover those 3 schools. Then, as it goes down, what we would say Gallego primary, Gallego intermediate, we would propose 2.5 clerks, because what we've seen there is that it's so busy there that we need the assistance of an additional part, at least a half-time clerk that would help there. So as you can see, we go down the line. Challenger, Apollo, Star. Star may not need a full-time clerk, so that .5, that's where we got the other .5 for Gallego Intermediate. And then Esperanza, because Esperanza and Sierra are 2 large and very busy schools that have many special needs students. Sierra, because it's a 2-8 school, so it's almost like 2 schools in one. And that's why we propose having 3 clerks for those 2, so that one could also support the other school if necessary. DV and Sunnyside High School would each have a nurse specialist if proposed, and then 1 clerk full-time. And then Ocotillo, because of the different programs there, because there's infants and toddlers, we gave that nurse kind of a triage opportunity to be support for Sierra, but not necessarily be assigned to Sierra because of the very unique nature of the students at Ocotillo. So as it is, the proposed FTE would be reduced for nurses from 16.2 to 10, and then the proposed health assistants increased from 15 to 22. Any questions so far?
Oh, Ms. Quintero.
So we're going to lose 6.2 RNs.
Right, and right now we have 3 vacancies.
Right. So 10 people will have to reapply for those
They
positions?
would all have to reapply. So I'll show you what comes next, is that the process and the reorganization, because this, for nurses, it is a reduction in force. And so in working with HR, and I appreciate the work that Laura and Dr. Bergman have provided in making sure we have the process. And so the contracts for health services, no one in health services received a contract because we are reorganizing. And so for the nurses, depending on what the board's decision is tonight, all the nurses would need to receive a non-renewal letter. And so as we reorganize, we would send out a job description, and the positions would be posted as nurse specialist, and then the nurses would apply. Technically, we don't have 16 right now, we have 13. 13 people would be applying for 10 positions, basically. So, because of the vacancies. And then, once the positions are posted, we would hire the coordinators first and assign schools to them. And then they might be able to help us with some of the interviews. And the same way that you may have seen in the past, where we'd have them all at once, all the interviews sort of in a job fair situation, where we'd have representatives from those sites, and we wouldn't have to go through this long, arduous, daily interviewing, where I envisioned it would be kind of all at once, and people would just go from station to station and get them all done at once, where we've done in other situations where when we closed Los Ranchitos, for example, that's how many of those positions got placed. And then we would designate a job fair. So that's the reorganization for the nurses. For the clerks, it would not be necessary, because we're going to propose reclassifying them, but they wouldn't necessarily have to apply for their positions unless they want to bid for a position in another school. But this is what we would create a new job description, because they do a lot more than what the health clerk job description entails. They have a lot of responsibilities as health clerks. And we have wonderful nurses. We have great staff. The whole health services program is just outstanding, and we have some very long-standing people with us. Some have implied that they might be interested in retiring or whatever. We don't know that exactly, but like I said, we've got some positions that are still sitting vacant. We would propose to increase the number of days for clerks so that they could be on the same schedule as the nurses, so they could go through the training and have opportunities for professional development and be with the nurses in the same schedule as they would. And it would be an 8-hour per day position. That hasn't changed. And the range, our beginning range right now for clerks is 1102. We would propose that we move it, the minimum, to 1215. And so depending, just like everything else, there's a range for those that have been here a long time. The range would go as a maximum of 1702. And right now, for beginners, it would be about $1 and some cents for those people who are newly hired as health assistants, and depending on the experience. So that's the process that we're recommending for the clerks versus the nurses. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Question about the nurses. I would assume, since we don't have any substitutes available for nurses, that we would encourage anyone that did not want to take a position or didn't get the position at school to become a substitute nurse.
Oh, absolutely. We've also encouraged those. We have a couple of our nurses who share a position, and so we encourage them as well that if they can job share, it has to be somebody who's be willing to job share. And they would still have 2 or 3 schools depending on the assignment, but they would job share. So that way we don't want to lose anybody. If I had my way, we would never lose anybody. But that would be a way to keep our talent here in the district where they could share with someone else. And then, but they would have to be willing, the people with whom they are sharing would have to be willing to do that. And it would still mean 2 or 3 schools, as you saw as a draft. We're having another staff meeting tomorrow where we're going to go over this and then finalize what the school configurations will end up looking like.
Ms. Quintero?
We have, occasionally I see vans, big old trucks with taking care of the kids' eyes and vision and
Yes.
dental from the U of A and stuff like that. Are those still traveling around our district?
We have a variety of services. We have our Lions Club, who they have just been, Richard Stevenson and the Lions Club, they've been wonderful with his volunteers. They come out to the schools and they do the vision screening, and they'll go to each school, and he's already trying to schedule for next year. So he's been amazing with the services that the Lions Club have provided, and that will continue. And we're very grateful to Richard and for the Lions for doing this. And they can go in, and in an hour, they can have a school, if the school's ready for them, they can have it screened. They're having a training for our staff who are able to attend on our in-service day on Monday. And then we do have the van that comes from the U of A twice a month and parks right there in front of Los Ranchitos. And you don't need to necessarily be a patient. They expect that hopefully people would make appointments, but they will see students there. We also have the health fair, back to school fair, where there are vision and hearing, vision screenings at Los Ranchitos, and also immunizations. So there's a variety of services. We also have a MOU with general dentistry for children. And that's not a van any longer. It's actually a mobile chair that they bring a special chair into the school. The schools designate a space and they can see the children there. It has to be the parents have to apply for that, and they have a real easy app where the parent can then register with general dentistry. That's through an MOU that you've approved in the past. All those services will continue. We're very lucky. We also have a partnership with El Rio and with the Pima County Health Department, who provide also additional services like sealants and things like that, you know. So we call on them for support as well. And we have, again, our staff, if you have any questions specifically for them, they are also available to answer questions. So that is what we are proposing, and change is never easy, like I said, but we've had a variety of issues, shrinking budgets and difficulty finding people and schools left uncovered, and our kids are the ones that are oftentimes in a pickle where we just don't have anybody to serve them.
Ms. Stone, did you have a question?
Yes. Couple of questions here. First of all, I know LPNs and RNs, what kind of training they have to go through. What type of training does a health clerk go through?
There's a whole protocol of that. That's a very good question. There's a whole protocol of what to do, like what do you do in an emergency? What do you do if we have a protocol for stock albuterol, for meds, for what can...
But do they go through, where do they get the training?
The training is with our nurses here, and also we're providing for anybody who can come to the vision screening. And then in terms of delegation, we have to show, there's a whole protocol of trainings that need to have, you know, taking a temperature, you know, a whole number of them. There's a booklet of different kinds of protocols. And then the person who signs off on it or delegated, it's on the nurse's license. If the nurse feels uncomfortable having the delegation on his or her license, then our Banner University medical director, Dr. Johansson, signs off on that. So everything from what's a standing order, what do we do about Tylenol, what are the standing orders? We can't provide those medications. What is a clerk supposed to do, allowed to do, and what is the clerk not allowed to do? That's all laid out in a protocol manual. And then the nurses, and I know Nurse Sarah and Nurse Jan have provided some of that training for some of our clerks, even for some of the non-medical staff, because of we were desperate to have somebody to be able to cover at the school. Non-medical people were also trained, not as much as what a clerk would do, but to have somebody on site who could be there if there was no nurse and no clerk. Each school needed to designate 2 to 3 people who could serve in a pinch, in an emergency.
Okay, so they get training, mainly they get training here in the district?
Mostly.
They're in
yes.
district
But
training?
we also have our medical, Dr. Johansson, who can be available for additional training as needed.
Okay.
But they're in-house, basically, and that's what we want. With a group effort, when we have teams, that it's more likely that they will get more consistent. Right now, as we found in places where there were clerks versus where there weren't, it was inconsistent depending on the nurse, how much the clerk was allowed to do and not allowed to do. But if that's consistent, here are what the clerks are expected to do and not expected to do, because they're not nurses, so they have to always rely on the expertise of the RN. And so whether by phone, if there's an emergency, for example, Nurse Sarah right now, her clerk has been, in one of the schools, has been out doing an internship, and so she's covering that school. She has to cover that school and 2 additional schools that she has already, because it's that matter of where do we provide that coverage. So.
I think there's a little bit of a surprise here in that I've always told people that the only reason we don't have nurses in every school is because we can't find nurses. That, we can't afford to pay what they would get at a clinic or a hospital. We've just never been able to afford that. But that you know, it wasn't so much of a money matter as much as it was of a lack of ability to find a person to apply for the job.
Right.
And that our openings were always because we couldn't find enough nurses to apply for the jobs. So I guess I'm just a little bit, you know, surprised that we've got, 3 nurses that we're gonna not hire back. You know, I like the organization. I like the fact that we're gonna have somebody at all the schools, and we have all these health clerks that are gonna be able to help out. And I like the fact that everybody's gonna get paid more money. It's just bothersome that we can't find enough nurses, and here we are. None of the schools, none of the districts throughout Pima County can find enough nurses, and here we're letting 3 good nurses, you know, go. And I think that's probably the only thing that really seems to, well, that's what, I mean, I'm glad for the reorganization, I'm glad for the pay. It just bothers me losing 3 nurses when we've always struggled to find nurses.
Right. It's
And
difficult.
tonight I was gonna say, let's talk to, let's see if we can get some retired nurses from the hospitals that have been working 80 hours a week and are ready to retire and take it a little bit less stressful of 80 hours, but
Right. And
but
some
if we're
of our
gonna let them
nurses,
go.
Even, you know, sitting with us today, that was one of the things that she mentioned, Sarah, is that she was at a hospital and really did not like the
Hours and
the hours of a hospital.
Right.
And other reasons, but it's not so much only that we can't find them, we can't retain them. And they'll come and leave and come and leave. And so it's difficult. And yes, we would love to keep all 16 FTE. We would love to keep those. And we would also like a clerk in every school. But is that a cost that the district is able to take on at this time?
That's just what I'm wondering. I mean, without taking any of the hourly rate range away, is there no way that we can afford, is that what we're saying, we can't afford those 3 nurses? I mean, we could plug them in, but we cannot afford those 3 nurses, is that what we're saying?
Mr. Holmes? Yeah, we can't afford keeping the 3 nurses and then getting health clerks in every school. I mean, that's the dilemma, and the reality is, yeah, without an override and things that these other districts have, we're now down to try to make it work with what we have. So unfortunately, to make this happen, it's a trade-off so that we don't have an increase in our budget.
So it's no longer, I can't no longer say that it's not that we can't afford it, but that we can't find it. I've got to change that to we can't afford it.
But no, it's still a viable concern that we have. I mean, the fact we haven't had these 10 nurses for forever. I mean, it has been a rotating in and out door. We're fortunate to have 10 now, but I can't say that we're going to retain those 10 next year. The reality is we haven't had consistently 16 FTE for a long time. And so the fortunate we do have 10 now, but retaining them is still, we have 10 now. I can't say that we'll have 10 next year, even if we kept that. That makes sense. So that's still a dilemma.
Right now, we have 13.
Yeah.
And I can't
13.
remember the last time when we had a full
13.
contingent of nurses.
Or
I
16.
can't remember when we had every single school fully staffed for the entire year. Sunnyside High School, the first time we had a vacancy there, it was vacant for almost a year. And then we got a position, the person was there for a couple of months and then left, and now it's vacant again. And so, you're right, Ms. Dong, that it is difficult. I mean, we have wonderful staff, and I mean, if we could afford what AMFI's doing, that would be wonderful, right, fine by me. The thing is if we pay nurses more and pay clerks more, we can't afford all of the above, like Mr. Holmes was saying. If we leave everything alone, we also then stand to lose very valuable clerks, and we still can't find nurses. Not only will we not be able to fill the nurse positions, but then we will lose some very valuable clerks who have been with us for many years and who are still barely making $12 an hour. And so that's why it's kind of a give and take, and it's not easy. And I'll admit that some of the nurses are not happy about this, but I'm happy to, have any of the nurses who are here to comment if they'd like to, if you'd like to hear from them.
Would anyone like to comment?
Support. Support one
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Rudden. I'm one of the current nurse specialists. There's 2 in the district.
And I'm Jan Sissons. I also have multiple schools, but this time I wasn't hired under the specialist title, but have been functioning as such. I'll start by saying we both have multiple schools, and it seems that the nurses that have multiple schools understand the benefit of having the health clerks, one in every school. Because if somebody calls in sick or somebody has surgery or whatever, we don't have anyone to fill in at those schools. So when there's one nurse, you know, it's wonderful that she can have her domain and she can be there all the time. But if she were to be off, there's no one to fill in there. And if someone's out elsewhere, she's not free to leave her area and go help out as well. So at this point, we kind of have the freedom of helping others as well as filling in at our own schools when our clerks are not there. So that's a real benefit. So.
And with the current state of staffing, with not having a health clerk in every school, and not having so many floating nurses when we have had times, like right now I'm the one with the health clerk out, yet I don't have as much flexibility. So it has been, you know, an interesting situation the last several weeks that this has been going on, but it, you know, it's still been successful. I know that I have health clerks in my other schools, and I know that they've had training and that they're very competent in caring for these students. If we had additional health clerks, if I had a situation where I had multiple health clerks out, which did actually happen during this time, then we would be able to hopefully pull somebody else to come and help out at the school, because as much as I would like to, I can't split myself in 2 and be in 2 of my schools. And so I see that as one very big advantage of this model moving forward, is that we'll have more bodies, and we're going to be working in more of a team concept, which I think has been missing in this department.
One more thing that I see as a big benefit is there are a lot of things that are really RN-specific duties. And then there are things that can be done by other people. And I think when the RNs are doing all of the care, and I've been a hospital nurse and such, and I saw that change when I was first a nurse. We had 3 patients and we gave them baths and did everything. Those days are gone because things have to change. And right now, nurses are providing RN care. And that's kind of the model that we're kind of looking at, where we're providing the RN care. And then we have our support staff that's doing the things that doesn't necessarily take an RN to do. And so that's where I see this really making a lot of sense.
Any other questions from the board? Ms. Quintero?
I just want to, so you're in favor of this plan?
Absolutely.
Yes, oh yes.
Can we sustain this plan, Hector?
Based on the conversation I had with Ms. Favela, the proposed model will not cost slightly more than what it's costing us right now, so we can sustain it.
Little more,
Yeah.
but not significantly.
Much, but we can sustain that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board or discussion?
One of the proposals that several of our nurses made is that they were really in favor of having a full-time coordinator, one coordinator that wouldn't have any schools. But that is not, we are not able to sustain that right now, because then that would mean fewer nurses even then, and then more of an expense of having a full-time coordinator.
Mr. Holmes?
So I just want to be careful about the question you posed about sustainability, and I don't want to make a commitment here in the dais that we can't. So I think sustainability is truly year to year with everything that we have in the budget. I just want to make sure that's real clear. I mean, we want to sustain this amount. That's kind of why we're going down this route. But if we continue to face cuts, I think these are all open discussions that we have to have related to all the different programs and miles that we have. I just want to make sure that's real clear, that it's not a commitment forever.
And conversely, if we happen to become financially better off than we are, we could actually change the program and improve it. So
that's right.
We're not blocked at all.
The other thing that we have to take into consideration, that 1215 won't sustain for a couple of years, because it's going to be increasing in a couple of years as well.
Right.
So.
we'll have the compression on that scale as well.
And it's a range, depending on, we have some of our clerks here, is Nina and Lisa. They've been here, Yvette has been here several years, but I think Nina and Lisa have been here
Forever.
longest, I think. And how many? 12 years and 10 years. They're outstanding clerks. In the days when we were starting to move away from having a nurse in every school, if you heard Jan was not hired as a nurse specialist, yet she has more than one school. In the past, they were already having to take on more than one school. And because we hadn't done the reorganization, we couldn't just say, okay, now you're a nurse specialist. That's not the process. But Nina and Lisa were what we called roving clerks, and they would go out there and they would just fill in schools that didn't have anybody. They did an outstanding job and continue to do an outstanding job, as the others that are here. We have some very good, Vanessa is there in the loved T-shirt. She's been here a little less. How many years have you been here, Vanessa? Just 1 year, but she's also outstanding. So Jan can leave the school and know that she leaves the school in good hands. And if there's an issue, she's going to get a call and say, here's what's happening. And if in case Jan has to run back to her school, she does that. So it's not like they're going to be all alone and never have any opportunity to have the supervision of a nurse. They always have to be under the tutelage of a nurse. And it is difficult. Change is always difficult. I hear you, Ms. Dong. We lived in the days where we supported a nurse in every school. It's just become a different process now.
Ms. Stone?
I'd like to move that we approve the health services reorganization as submitted.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Fell.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, nurses and health services clerks. Clerk. What's our new term?
Health services administrative assistants, health office. Health office administrative assistants.
Health office administrative assistants. Welcome to your new title. I'll learn it. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the School Safety Resolution 2018. Mr. Holmes?
Yes, President Crouch, members of the governing board, this is a resolution that has been proposed by Arizona's School Boards Association that we're bringing forward. They're asking multiple districts to consider this resolution. I thought this resolution actually matched a lot of the core beliefs of this governing board, so I brought it forward to see if this would be a resolution as a governing board that we could agree to and pass tonight.
Would the board agree to have Mr. Holmes read the resolution?
Sure.
Mr. Holmes, please.
Sure. This is a governing board school safety resolution. Whereas more than 115 students in at least 170 primary or secondary schools in the United States, including the 15 students killed on February 14th, 2018 at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, have experienced a campus shooting since 1999, when the first mass shooting at a U.S. public school killed 12 students and 1 teacher and injured 21 others at Columbine High School. Whereas the children who have attended American public schools since 1999 have never known a world without school shootings. Whereas the basic life needs of children, including feeling physically secured and protected, must be met for them to succeed in school and life. Whereas a vibrant, enriching, and respectful school culture where all students feel a sense of belonging and connection is essential to school safety. Whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board believes both the physical and mental well-being of our students and employees is critical to their ability to thrive. Whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board has prioritized improving health camp support and safety precautions to prevent gun violence and other acts of violence from occurring on campus. Whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board believes that school employees' roles in campus safety and student well-being must not include carrying a gun or having access to one in their classroom or work area. Whereas the responsibility for keeping students safe, and staff safe, on campus, including from gun violence, is a shared responsibility that cannot be borne by public schools alone. It requires support from the community, local, and state public safety agencies and policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels. Therefore, be it resolved that the Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board calls upon, one, the local, county, and state public safety agencies to prioritize collaborative threat assessment and crisis planning with school districts. Number two, that the United States Congress and state legislatures, including the Arizona State Legislature, to prioritize the protection of students and school system employees from gun violence on campuses by passing legislation that A, more effectively regulates access to firearms, especially by youth and those experiencing mental health issues, and urgently address access to firearms capable of quickly producing mass casualties. B, providing funds above those needed for basic building maintenance and improvement, for capital improvements shown to increase safety and security. C, funds public health research on issues related to gun violence. And D, advances mental health supports. We ask this we adopt this 13th day of March 2018.
Ms. Strong?
If there are no questions, I'd like to go ahead and move the motion.
Please.
I'd like to move that we approve the school safety resolution 2018.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for reading that.
Thank you.
Ms. Quintero?
I make a motion to request to approve the governing board members recess into executive session for discussion of legal advice pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Strong?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. We're moving into executive session.
to approve the governing board members recess into executive session for discussion on personnel pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez? Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion carries.
So
We're
did
going
I-
back into executive session.
So did I miss our closing of
back again. Ms. Quintero, do you have a motion?
I move that the governing board approve the appointment of Rosemary Rosas, principal at Desert View High School for the 2018-2019 school year, and be placed on step 15.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Speech, no.
I'll make you proud.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is, if I can find my agenda.
Suggestion for future agenda items.
Oh, the future.
Suggestion for future agenda items.
Yep. Suggestion for future agenda items. Are there any suggestions for future agenda items from the board members?
I think mine was already taken for the immigration the next.
Mr. Hernandez, do you have any suggestions for future agenda items?
Not at this time.
Hearing none, we have no unfinished business. Is there a move to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn?
A second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Night.